Hey friends, it's Dr. J, and it is the evening, as you can tell, the night after the modern Western celebration of Halloween. Now, I say the modern Western celebration of Halloween because a lot of you also know that at this exact time of the year, in many countries and cultures around the world, there were other kinds of traditions or celebrations. Now, a lot of people are very cynical about Halloween today, and it's become too commercial, and it's about costumes and candy and sales and things like that. And to that, I can only say, well, of course. I mean, isn't that like exactly what our culture is about, right? If you have a culture that has lost its belief in the soul, that is bereft of any universally accepted sense of spirituality or relationship to the spiritual world, well, then there's nowhere else for Halloween to go except into some twisted, repressed, psychic expression of what we want to reconnect with, but through what we feel permission to express. So that means that we're going to find skeletons and ghosts and magic and all these things that people crave, that people want to believe is real, but it's going to be done in a way that masks the real desire for that. So it's going to be parties, and it's going to be cartoons, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be silly, and it's going to be really, really disconnected inside. But it doesn't have to be disconnected inside for you. We can take this moment, this time of the year, and the prevalence of ghosts and goblins to remember other traditions like Samain, the Celtic tradition that spread into other parts of Europe, including even Spain. We can remember Dia de los Muertos and Dia de los Santos. These are not Halloween traditions at all. But what they have in common is this sense that as the days grow longer, and as we shift from the brightness and the suppleness of spring and summer into the brittleness and the decay of the late fall and the oncoming winter, that our minds and our hearts turn to other losses in our life, into other times of letting go, into other worlds. It's psychological, it's metaphysical, it's biological, and it's chronological. And it makes perfect sense. And it doesn't just make sense in the symbolic way, but it makes sense in what I would probably be calling the metaphysical way. That all of these signs and symbols and seasons are cues and triggers that activate and invite our intuition, our deeper longing, our sense that there is something more. And so, for thousands of years, our ancestors took this time to communicate with the spirit world, literally the world of spirits, to remember loved ones that have gone beyond, to call for connection or forgiveness or remembrance. In these various spirit world traditions, it's not about scary things. It's not about horror, but it is about confronting fear. Fear of mortality, fear of loss, fear of the unknown, fear of the magical, and yes, fear of the world of spirit that is almost palpable and yet inexplicable. Now, again, we're not going to get into how this gets distorted in the modern world, and it just becomes horror movies and all these kinds of alternative ways of getting back to that same feeling. But we are going to take a moment to say, are you making time for that in your own life? Time to marinate in your own fear of mortality. Time to contemplate the other world, the other side, and to let it be a part of this world. And even if you just can't believe it, because you don't think there's enough evidence for it, well, for you, then could you embrace the psychology of it, the symbolism of it? Could you light a candle for someone or for those that you've loved and lost? Could you write a letter to them? Could you put out some of their favorite food? Could you put up photos? Could you create a sacred space, an altar for a night or even a week or 4 days? What we find is that when we create purposeful, ritual, ceremonial connection to the other world, something happens. At the most superficial level, we feel alignment with life because death is a part of life. Loss is a part of life. But we also create an invitation, an opening, and many of us feel the presence of those that have gone before or those that watch over us when we create time and space for them. We feel it in our dreams. We feel it in our prayers. We feel it in our meditations. And that expands our reality for a moment. It expands who we are and what we are. And I think it even puts into perspective the simple things in life, the silly things that we worry about, when we remember that the cosmos is so much bigger than what we relate to day. For me, it draws us to the vastness, not just metaphysically, but even physically, to the trillions and trillions of galaxies, to the infinite edges of our universe. These contemplations make the pain and suffering of everyday life smaller somehow in the vastness of time. These grand visions of where we come from, where we're going, what we are, humble us and infuse life with a sense of gratitude and even the inspiration to make the most of the time that we have, the influence we have, and the legacy that we will leave behind. So I invite you to consider the ancestors that came before you, communicating with them, thanking them, expressing yourself to them, and consider the ancestor that you yourself will be. And how will people look back and remember you? Will you be one of the wise ancestors that they call upon for help and wisdom and guidance? Or will you be one of those people who were just loved and lost, but never really stood for something, never really represented something? I don't mean changing the world, maybe just changing your life or reminding people of something, embodying something, empowering something. Things to consider. Happy Halloween and happy Spirit World celebrations.